Vanguard!
Although Uranus learned how to tap into the astral plane, he wasn't satisfied with his newfound powers. He was devoted to unlock even greater power. For many decades, he meditated until one day there was a freak accident where he opened up a rift to the astral plane. But instead of an outwards flow, it sucked him into this higher plane. While trapped into this dimension, he started to absorb immense power, and this led to his body to undergo a transformation. Now empowered with this new energy, he has full control over the astral plane rifts, and he can open and close them on demand. And thus, he steps back into the plane where planet Cray resides to bring balance to the battlefield. Origin Deity of Heavenly Light Uranus is the brand new form of Uranus and is once again the main unit for the Genesis Astral Plane deck. Where the previous Astral Poets could only create the Astral Plane and have minor use afterwards, this new version of Uranus only begins when he opens up the plane. And to top it all off, he can open it much sooner than the others. With his first skill, when he has 3 force markers on the Vanguard circle, he can Soul Blast 5 grades to open up the Astral Plane for a single turn. This allows him to open up the plane much sooner and on a much higher consistency. But as explained earlier, this is only where his power starts. Once the plane is open and we summon Valkerion, only then can Uranus show its true potential. Once our Astral Deity attacked, we can rest 2 Astral Poets, and by doing so, we can restand our Valkerion for another attack. This allows us to swing in twice with a gigantic beater. The only thing is that the second attack loses all drive checks. But it doesn't matter as Valkerion by default is already a 70k attack. Origin Deity of Heavenly Light Uranus together with the new support cards allows us to open up the clan to more possibilities, battle tactics and strategies. But before we can talk about that, let's take a look at the various support units that Uranus needs to support the Astral Plane. First off, when we talk about the Astral Plane deck, we need to address the Astral Deity in the room, Giant Deity of Distant World Valkerion. This card allows us to swing in with an extra 70k attacker, but on top of that, it can get extra drive checks. The only difference is that they go towards the soul instead of the hand. This is actually great as it fuels our soul blasting units and it fuels our new Uranus to keep opening the astral plane. Besides the new Uranus, we have 2 more great frees that we can and should utilize, and one of them is the old trial deck Uranus. This great free allows us to generate extra markers without needing to write it, which is great if we want to go into Origin Deity Uranus for his restand potential. The second great free support card is Quaking Heavenly Dragon Astraios Dragon. This is another Astral Poet which allows us to have more targets for Origin Deity Uranus restand ability. But it is also a great follow-up right target if we want to get more value and if we can't reopen the Astral Plane with our Origin Deity Uranus. With our columns weakened as we rest our great frees means the deck lacks the offensive on the rear guards. But that is where this grade 2 steps in. Phenomenos of the Constellation, this grade 2 allows us to generate an insanely powerful beater on the side columns, even without the boosting potential. This means we can strike with a powerful Vanguard, Valkerion, and now also rear guards. Also, its extra draw potential helps with getting to our pieces as we run weird ratios with the excess great frees and also Valkerion in our deck. Speaking of access to great frees, we need a way to filter them from our deck so we can increase the consistency of Origin Deity Uranus. This gap is perfectly filled with Decay of Just Path. This grade 1 can potentially fetch 2 grade frees for the cost of 1 card to soul, but that cost can be also a setup for Origin Deity as we can put a high grade unit into the soul. Another thing about this card is that it allows us to get a marker on turn 1 for free, which is an insane tempo play. With all the extra soul blasting, we might need some extra soul charging. Best way to do that is by getting it all for free, and we can do that in the likes of Witch of Innocence, Clary. This grade 1 is a great early game card as it can put extra pressure behind our Vanguard, and the moment you don't need the soul, you can just open up the astral plane whenever you want and replace her with Valkerion. Speaking of soul, Atlas of Heavenly Sphere is another great card to generate soul, but not only that, he makes a marker and draws a card. This is a perfect support card for Origin Deity Uranus, as for 1, it increases the grade count in your soul, 2nd, it helps you to achieve the free force markers, and 3, it draws into either another Atlas, another Astral Poet, or even your Valkerion, and if that's not the case, he could hit one of your many searchers you are playing. like Deputized Bear for example. This Valkerion Searcher is great as we need more consistency, as unlike the older version of the deck, we need our cards a lot faster as we'll open up the Astral Plane much sooner. Another very powerful card is Strongbow of Starry Night Ulixis. This grade 2 not only sets up soul for our various cards, it also allows us to draw into our pieces faster, so another very powerful consistency card. Most of our skills will use soul, so it's very important to manage soul, but this deck will do it a bit differently than your typical deck that relies on soul, as we also have very specific soul blasting costs with Origin Deity Uranus. The idea is to always set up enough grades in your soul, and if you need the soul blast cards, go for the lower grades first, like the grade 0 or the grade 1 cards. As for counterblast, we hardly use any, it's mainly used for drawing, but one of the most powerful counterblast skill we have access to is Atlas, as not only does it draws you, it gives you a marker and another card in soul. However, once we don't need the extra marker and the soul, then suddenly something like Phenomenos becomes a lot better as it outright pluses you on card economy. Your trigger lineup is very basic, you will have a good mix of crits and draws as you need your pieces, so hitting some draws might not hurt. But with those high beaters, you might want to run Suffice crits so you can capitalize on them, so somewhere around the 8-4-4 split should be good. As for the markers, 9 out of 10 times you go for Force 1 for obvious reasons, as you can stack quite a few of them. But with the new cards like Decay and the fact that you need less for Origin Deity Uranus, you can opt to go for the Force 2 playstyle. You can generate 1 on turn 1. This means you will swing in with a double crit or right from turn 1 on grade 1, grade 2 and even on grade 3. If you can manage to generate enough markers, you can even put the unwrite marker on the back row, giving your Valkerion also a natural extra crit. Meaning your Valkerion will also swing in with 2 crits twice. So depending on your opening hand and the flow of the game, going for Force 2 is now an actual viable option. Unlike the previous build where it gave you no real advantage. Origin Deity of Heavenly Light Uranus speeds the original Astral Plane playstyle up to new levels. The overall game plan is still the same, make markers, open the Astral Plane and swing with a powerful Astral Deity. With the new support wave that can be done faster, more consistently, and we can combine it with more potential finishing combos like the Force 2 play, but that is just the tip of the iceberg. In this video we will cover a list that goes for maximum consistency with running all kinds of searchers as well as extra marker generators. But we also have a list that goes for a Soul Blast heavy playstyle to empower our rearguards, but we begin with a list that we can build somewhat straight out of the box, as there is an issue as you can't build this deck from this support wave as we miss too many cards like other grade 3s and triggers. So this list takes multiple cards from the new support wave and combines that with the old VR build. And the result is this list. As you can see, we have all the free Astral Poets as well as the Valkerion. We also see the core support cards like Decay, Phenomenos and Atlas, but we see 2 more new faces in this list. These are the new duo for Genesis that gives us early game. The grade 2 is Daybreak Sorcerer Ashwa. This unit combined with the grade 1 can generate an extra marker for putting this unit into the soul. This actually is a great trade-off, as for 1, that gives us a grade 2 in soul, so that means we already have 5 grades in the soul once we ride up to Origin Deity Uranus, but it also gives us 1 extra marker, so we only miss 1 marker to open up the Astral Plane. Then the grade 1 allows us to Soul Blast a card to draw a card. This is also great as we can Soul Blast the grade 0 starter, so we don't lose out on our grade count, but we still get to draw potentially into our pieces. And because we use soul instead of counterblast, that means we can still use it for Atlas to generate the 3rd marker. The main strategy behind this deck is to use your Decay to get multiple grade 3s to your hand, so you can set up for a Origin Deity of Heavenly Light Uranus turn when you swing in twice with your Valkerion. Also, the card you put in Soul can help you achieve the 5 grades in Soul. If you have an additional Valkerion in hand, you can potentially put it into Soul, or if you have an excess amount of grade 3s, this will up the consistency of your follow-up plays quite significantly. You ideally want to place your grade 3s in the back row so you can still attack with cards like Phenomenos, so you can dish out 4 to 5 attacks with decent numbers. You need to keep track of your soul whenever you use Soul Blast, as you want to have 5 grades in soul when using Origin Deity Uranus ability. Also keep track of your marker generators, as we have Decay, Atlas, Gleaming Lord Uranus, Astraios to create extra markers. You need at least 2 to get enough markers on your first grade free turn, and don't forget the follow-up turn, you can just write up into a Gleaming Lord Uranus or Astraios Dragon, as you will fulfill the 5 markers when resolving their skill. Now that you understand how the basics work, let's try to increase the consistency of the deck by running a better grade distribution and more draws and searchers. As you can see, we still run those same core cards, only did we drop the duo cards for Ulixius as a draw and soul engine, and also Deputized Bear as a Valkerion searcher. But the biggest change is the exclusion of Astraios Dragon, and instead we have Battle Maiden Mutsuki. This grade 2 is our main right target, as it allows us to create more markers in the early game as well as more drawing. The reason why we dropped Astraios Dragon is because it's mainly a useless card once we go into Origin Deity Uranus, as unlike Gleaming Lord Uranus, we can't use it on the rearguard circle. So instead we opt to go for Mutsuki, which allows us to have a solid grade 2 right target, which will help us to achieve our game state, while at the same time increase the right consistency, as we now have 11 grade 2s. The playstyle and game plan is almost identical to the previous build, only now we have some minor differences. With Mutsuki in the list, we have yet another card that allows us to generate extra markers. This increased the potential of the Force 2 strategy, as we either can get on turn 1 or turn 2 with Mutsuki and Decay. Also seen as only one Mutsuki is useful, she is a great soul charge target with Decay. These 2 cards also allows us to fetch out Valkerion early on with Deputized Bear without having to put another card from hand into the soul. With the basic Astral Plane build covered, let's take a look at the more soul charge and soul blast heavy strategy that adds in another win condition. This list is almost identical to the previous list, but with a slight change. We once again go back to 8 grade 2s, and we replace the Valkerion Searcher with a new card, Witch of Innocent Clary. She helps us soul charge extra cards for both Uranus, but mainly for our latest addition in this build, Braw Antler Dragon. This grid 3 allows us to get the most value out of our triggers, as it can copy all of the trigger effects given to our Vanguard. This combined with Valkerion's extra drive checks can be devastating. The idea behind this build is that you play the normal Valkerion strategy, only now you try to utilize Clary to build up soul on a fast pace, and once you go into your grade 3 turns, you want to slam 1 or 2 Braw Antlers onto the board and attack with your Vanguard as well as Valkerion with potentially 3 to 7 drive checks, and if you hit a couple of triggers, you pass them all to your Vanguard, which in turn will power up these units as well. But you don't have to go this route, as you can still go for the normal Valkerion plays with Phenomenas and the potential restand with Origin Deity Uranus. Origin Deity of Heavenly Light Uranus, together with the new support cards, opens up the deck to a whole new playstyle. We still have the marker generations and the Astral Plane mechanic, but we empower them with more beaters, more searchers, and more ways to utilize the Astral Plane. Uranus is an interesting card that makes the Astral Plane deck a lot more powerful and might be good enough to compete with the top dogs. Control the Astral Plane and use its portals to unleash devastating power onto the battlefield. But beware! Playing with reality might have some unforeseen consequences that even the gods themselves can comprehend. And there you have it, the deck spotlight for the brand new VR for Genesis, Origin Deity of Heavenly Light Uranus. The brand new VR that brings an interesting playstyle to the already interesting Astral Plane strategy for Genesis, as this new Uranus allows the deck to play on a whole different level. We have the typical build up enough force markers so you can have access to your Astral Plane and smack him with a giant beat stick. But now we can actually do some really interesting strategies with potential Force 2 strategies, with the new Decay of Just Path, and also the restanding ability of the new Uranus allows the deck to be very powerful and has some awesome high roll aspect to it that isn't annoying to deal with. If you like this video and you want more of these type of content, then check out this video where I went over the deck spotlight for the new Angel Feathers VR Arc Aether Malkuth Malek. And if you want more things more like Gear Chronicle, Steampunk, then stick around, as the next deck spotlight we're diving into is the new deck spotlight for Gear Chronicle with Chrono Tiger Rebellion. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel and everything that's happening on the channel, then head over to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I'm Mr. Timely, and I see you guys in the next one!